Human biology. Look at us. This is peak biological performance right here. I mean, all other animals are cool and stuff, but we're just like so much better, you know? Like, hey, look, man, relax, all right? I'm just saying the truth, all right? Don't shoot the messenger. I mean, look at our anatomy. So aesthetic, so utilitarian, and so perfectly constructed. Like, look at the spine, man. Flawless. The feet, flawless. The hip bones, perfect. Like, evolution is usually pretty psychotic, but even nature itself realized that humans are just top dogs. It's honestly pretty incredible how after a long line of various different species and many different extinctions, nature finally landed on a species that's probably the most dangerous to ever be birthed. An organism that can learn the nature of every natural phenomenon in its environment, as well as an organism that can learn the weakness of every single organism. Now, when it comes to human intelligence, why is it the way that it is? Why did we evolve to have such big brains, and have such immense knowledge of language and words? Well, we still don't really know. But of course, there are multiple theories. My favorite one being the social theory, which simply states that humans just evolved such intelligence to work socially together. And our intelligence was just a way to solve complex problems together with more efficiency. With intelligence as a biological function, we also don't know much. But we do know that in terms of the structure of the brain, connectivity of neural networks along with the amount of gray matter within the brain has been linked to having a higher intelligence. Which explains why you can have species with huge brains, but they're not the most intelligent. Gray matter is essentially responsible for information processing, which helps with intelligence. And the opposite of gray matter, white matter, is responsible for just facilitating communication of signals between different brain regions. Basically, it serves to act as like the infrastructure for the brain to work together. And all these tissues of gray and white matter are made up of neurons, these cells that are the foundation for the nervous system, which also means they're found not only within the brain but throughout the spinal cord and peripheral nervous system. The neurons transmit information through electrical and chemical signals, and each of these neurons has a cell body, and the cell body is essentially the main part of the neuron. And when it comes to cells in general, it's mainly used to describe where stuff like the nucleus and other important parts that help the cell itself function. But anyways, in neurons, the cell bodies are also called dendrites, and separate from the cell body but still part of the main neuron cell are axons. You can think of like an axon as simply like an output wire, like this thing that sticks out from the neuron cell. So think of it like this. In a neuron, you have the axon and the dendrites. The axon is what transmits signals away from the cell body, and the cell body, or dendrites, are the ones that receive signals. And when these neurons receive these signals, and these signals need to be transmitted to other neurons, the signals are transmitted through these connections called synapses, where the neurotransmitters are chemically released in response to an electrical signal. And when the signals reach the brain, the neural circuits within the brain, the gray matter and stuff, interpret and integrate the information. And after all this work is done, the rest of interpreting this information is placed on your dumbass intuition. But that's just explaining human intelligence, but it's an important part of who we are, so I had to get that out of the way. But now to what humans are as organisms. So in the beginning, right, humans start off as a mixture of genetic material found in both sperm and egg cells. The sperm being from the male and the egg cells being from the female, obviously. So essentially what happens when the male and the female mate, they're simply just combining these different sperm and egg cells, basically. And when combined, they form a zygote. The zygote then undergoes mitosis, creating copies of itself, and begins forming tissues and structures that will go on to make up the human itself. So then for the next 10 months, the fetus develops and gets bigger inside the female in a process known as pregnancy. Anyways, once the baby is done cooking in the oven, the female is now ready to give birth to the new human life. And just like all babies, they all have the same neotenic features, little hands, little feet, small faces, big old eyes, all that annoying stuff. The baby will continue to grow from here on, but now it will obviously be in the outside world, in the care of either the mother or also parents. Also, during this time, the baby will have no sense of self-preservation and will basically do anything to end its own life, which can be a concern for the parents, obviously. Besides that, the baby will remain on a liquid diet for around 6 months before switching to a mix of solids and liquids for about 2 years. Some people, however, continue this liquid diet even beyond infancy, but anyways.
That's not right.
This early diet is important for human development, as human breast milk, and milk in general, is like nature's natural protein shake. It contains lots of proteins, fats, and compounds that stimulate human growth, which is why milk is like the best shit ever and is top tier in terms of like foods you can use for bulking. Humans will go through many growth spurts, once during infancy, and then as the humans reach the later stages of childhood, they'll reach the most important growth spurt, puberty, where they turn into adolescents and receive the most growth in muscle mass, weight, height, and hair growth. And by the time they reach like adulthood, which is around the age of 20, most humans will have reached their physical maturity and achieved their adult height and proportions. Growth will still continue, however, even in this stage, in regard to things like tissues and organs, but for the most part, the skeletal growth is complete. Which means if you're 20 and you're still 5'6", yeah, bro, it's over, dude. It's time to check out. Your life's pretty much over. Now, in the modern era, our biology is mostly used as a way to serve not only our needs, but the needs of others within a society. That's just how humans always been, civilization. Humans are educated, trained, and disciplined to maximize their body's potential, which, look, say what you want about modern society, right? But it's honestly incredible that in today's world, any human child, any little skinny runt can bulk up and get the nutrients and equipment they need to improve and maximize their potential. Our ancestors didn't have this luxury. They didn't even have access to a stable, food supply. They simply ate what they could, which probably meant most humans back then just weren't able to reach their full potential simply because their bodies never got the right amount of nutrients. But in the modern world, we now have access to everything, and there's basically no excuse to be a little skinny cunt. And listen, man, to all the poor people out there, right, who are watching this, or, you have a family that doesn't, give you a large amounts of food, and you're wanting to get bigger, my advice is this. If you see a kid at lunch, right, you're at school, simply walk up to him and snatch that shit from his hands. If you want to get bigger, bro, you gotta do whatever it takes. But yeah, as modern humans living in these modern times, using everything in your arsenal to your advantage and maximize your body's potential is the best thing you can do. But outside of modern life, our early human ancestors and the human body in general, within in a natural setting, is designed to perform many functions. Looking at a human on its own, what you see is a generalist organism, an organism that's designed to be a jack of traits, with our only specialty really being our endurance and our tool use. Humans have limbs, obviously, for the locomotion, and are also used to manipulate our environment. Humans have an innate desire to build and use tools, and while some animals have this ability in some form, humans take it to a whole nother level. And along with this ability for building and tool use, another innate desire within us is social behaviors and interactions. Finding other humans to cooperate and bond with and, spend time with. We are very social. And this also leads to another desire within humans, which we share with almost every other animal, and that is our desire for reproduction and selecting the most genetically fit of our species. Sex. Lots of it. I mean, not to sound vain, but let's be honest, sex is literally the best thing. And really, that shouldn't even be an opinion thing, that should just be a human thing. Bro, you're biologically programmed to want sex all the time. That's just how it is, bro. I mean, besides a human's own desire for self-preservation, the desire to spread their genes, their likeness, right, is even more powerful. If you can't live forever, then the next best thing is to pass on not only your wisdom, but your own genetic material. Because obviously, your genetic material is the best. You are the best. You are the best human, and you want to spread those genes. Which, in the grand scheme of things, sounds pretty silly, and also sounds pretty selfish, but that's just how it is. And also, it's not really selfish because, it's natural to us. And also, that selfishness is what keeps us alive and continues on our species. We are all selfishly cooperating together. That's the beauty of it. Now, with the basics of human biology down, what about all the little quirks and small details of the human body? Human hair has always been a fascinating thing, and hair in general in most animals has always been a fascinating phenomenon. Honestly, who could blame our ancestors for believing in the creator when humans and animals look so sculpted and crafted? Yet that's what evolution does. And honestly, it makes life even more fascinating and badass that over millions of years we went from these bitch basic looking organisms to having complex and aesthetic looking organisms. With humans, we got our basic anatomy that may look unique compared to every other organism on the planet, but in reality it's actually not all that different. To put it in perspective, if you were an alien, and you wanted to quickly identify which organisms are from Earth and which aren't, all you have to do is look at our anatomy. You may think humans look different from everything else, but in reality, you can see that we're just like everything else. We all came from some distant common ancestor millions of years ago, And this common ancestor probably looked like this: an organism with 4 limbs, 2 eyes, and 1 mouth. Now look at us: a body, 4 limbs, 2 eyes, 2 nostrils, 1 mouth. A bear, 4 limbs, 2 eyes, 2 nostrils, 1 mouth. Dogs, 4 limbs, 2 eyes, 1 mouth. Cats, 4 limbs, 2 eyes, 1 mouth. Mice, 4 limbs, 2 eyes, 1 mouth. Almost every land-based organism has these same traits. And it's not just for mammals either. The only ones that really break this pattern are stuff like arthropods. But even then, that still makes sense, as arthropods, like insects, are all usually have the same ancestors relating back to some organism that spent a lot of time in the sea. Which is also why when you compare land animals to sea animals, things start to seem different, but like at the same time, you can still see the same ancestral roots. If you look closely enough, a lot of fish species still have the same traits. I mean, look at this: 4 limbs, or fins, 2 eyes, and 1 mouth. It's actually pretty cool, and it's basically the defining feature of most like Earth-based organisms. And again, it all ties back to this distant ancestor of ours, some primordial organism that evolved these traits. And nature decided that having 4 limbs and 2 eyes was enough, and it just kept it like that. The gravity of our planet, the environment, the atmosphere, everything, it all just led up to this type of organism, and I guess nature just selected it like this. It was just what we got. In the biology world, this is known as homology. And there's actually a name for this type of organism that has like 4 limbs, and that's a tetrapod. We are all tetrapods, meaning we have 4 limbs. If vertebrate alien species exist out there in the universe, like if we discovered an alien species with like 6 limbs and 3 eyes, for example, then it's probably safe to assume that their distant common ancestor was probably an organism that had the same features in some form. Although again, we're talking about aliens, so it could have evolved in a completely different way, but still, it's probably still plausible. But anyways, it's still probably a big question for a lot of people as to why humans have some of the features that they do. But there's always an explanation for it. So we humans, we used to have like a lot of hair, right? That's how we evolved. But now it's pretty much reduced down to only a few places. Like our head, face, armpits, and the other place. But why is the hair there the way that it is? Well, for the hair on the top of our head, for example, it's there because it's meant to protect, the brain and our skull and everything. We need that shit. So the hair there is meant to act as protection. And not only just that, but it's also a way to strategically cool us down. Having all that hair and all those sweat glands right on top of your brain helps to cool it down. And sweat in general is another great biological adaptation we have. The fact that we have this method of cooling ourselves down that works even while we're moving is incredible. This ability to retain our stamina even while on the move gave us the best endurance of almost any other animal. It's probably what also gave us humans the attitude of never giving up, never quitting, just we're always thugging it through. But besides being useful for sweat, having hair there also helps with sensing our environment. With hair on our head, we can feel the shifts in wind and feeling the air running through it. If you ever had like a sixth sense moment, like you felt someone behind you and you turn around and you actually saw them there, it was probably just because it was your hair alerting you to someone walking behind you, and like the air that they displace rubbed against your hairs. And what about eyebrows? Why are they placed so perfectly like that? Why do humans look so cool, basically? Well, the answer to that is eyebrows are placed in the position that they are simply as a way to keep our sweat from dripping into our eyes. If you ever played a sport, half of the time the sweat gets into your eye, not from it dripping down, but because like it got flicked in there somehow. Your eyebrows do most of the heavy lifting, keeping that shit from away from your eyes. Through natural selection, all these traits were just slowly gained to create a better organism that can withstand their environment. And let's look at the human eye. Forward-facing, predator-like eyes, which use binocular vision, which means that each eye sees a slightly different image. Basically, through the use of these 2 different images, created by both of our eyes, we were able to see the world through a 3-dimensional perspective. This helped us understand the distances between objects and made us better hunters. Because, yeah, I know people want to downplay humans by saying, well, for most of our time, we were actually prey, which is like kind of true, maybe in the very early stages. But get with the times, loser, right? We were absolutely predators for most of our time, especially as Homo sapiens, right? Like once we became Homo sapiens, once that genus came in, we were definitely predators, right? We took over this planet. This is our world. Humans also have 2 ears, similar to how we have 2 eyes. And just like eyes, the sound detected from both ears are combined by the brain to create an accurate sense of direction and distance where the sound is coming from. Our nostrils are also used for breathing, filtering, and smell detection. We have 2 nostrils simply as a way to optimize these functions and allow for adaptation just in case, one nostril or whatever has like a blockage or something. And then there's our fingers and thumbs, which alongside our brain is probably one of our most important extremities. This shit is what allows us to actually do something with our intelligence and allows us to manipulate the world to create all forms of tools and structures. It may not be obvious at first, but as you can see, a lot of the traits we have actually serve a purpose. And they're all in some form a survival trait that keeps us functioning. And once you realize that, you really do appreciate it. The fact that it's always there and it's pretty much automatic and autonomous. It doesn't need you to be constantly worrying about it. It just does the job on its own. I mean, imagine being a starfish, for example, where your asshole and your mouth share the same spot. Like, damn, that sucks to be you, like literally talking shit. The human form is clearly the superior life form, alright? And this form is what will be spread across the stars one day. Because humans are number one, dude. Come on. Like, seriously, right? But in all seriousness, learning about the human body is probably one of the most important things anyone can learn. Just as an athlete learns more about the abilities of his own body, learning the biology, anatomy, and neurology of your own body will give you a better understanding how you function and why you are the way you are. As human as it gets.